Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are taking a scalpel to one of the fastest growing and, frankly, most pervasive forces shaping modern life, wellness culture.
It really is pervasive, and when we say wellness, we have to be clear.
Exactly. We're not talking about just, eating a salad or trying to get 8 hours of sleep.
Not at all. We are talking about a true global behemoth. I mean, the sources point to an industry set to hit nearly $7 trillion globally by 2025.
That figure is just staggering, and it tells you this is a sprawling empire.
It includes everything from these highly specialized food trends and, custom-designed smart beds that track your sleep microclimate.
All the way to mandatory corporate policies and even the extreme personalized anti-aging routines of tech millionaires who are basically trying to hack evolution itself.
Right. It's unavoidable, and it's fascinatingly complex.
Absolutely. And it's funny because when the term was first coined, I think it was by Dr. John W. Travis back in 1979, the definition was so simple.
Beautifully simple. It was just the opposite of illness.
Yeah. It was about proactively seeking high-level wellness, even if you weren't technically sick. But today, that simple idea has been completely monetized.
Monetize into this pervasive high-stakes system of what feels like perpetual self-optimization. And that monetization, that scale, is exactly what demands a critical lens.
So our mission today, as we unpack the stack of sources you've shared, is to really reveal the underlying conflicts here. We're going to examine what happens when this relentless drive for individual optimization just crashes headfirst into systemic inequality.
And we'll look at where technology promises health but might risk serious privacy violations.
And maybe most importantly, how quickly critical thought and actual science get completely overwhelmed by these sensational and sometimes really dangerous pseudoscientific claims. This deep dive is your shortcut to understanding the real power and the false promises of modern wellness.
Let's get into it.
Okay, so let's unpack this history first. Modern wellness feels so new, right? Like something that was invented alongside social media and influencers.
It does feel that way. But our sources show its roots go way, way back. We're talking nearly 150 years to late 19th century Europe.
And what's so critical to understand is that this wasn't a health movement born from necessity or poverty. It was born from affluence.
Exactly. It was a deep cultural sense of unease. This was the life reform movement, or Lebensreform in German, and it was embraced mainly by the new middle classes.
And it was a direct response to what they saw as the side effects of industrial prosperity.
Right. Think of it as a kind of existential panic about inactivity, overindulgence, and just the dizzying pace of modern life in these rapidly expanding cities. They felt culturally compromised.
And they sought out some pretty radical practices to counteract it.
Oh, when you say radical, you mean radical. This was extreme self-restraint.
The practices included these intense, rigorous routines. Strict vegetarianism was central to it.
And extensive hydrotherapy was mandatory. That meant alternating steam baths with these prolonged, apparently quite painful cold plunges.
And they just fanatically shunned anything they saw as processed or polluted, like white bread, which was viewed as the symbol of unnatural refinement.
Yeah, they embraced open-air exercise, sunbathing, wearing loose, natural fiber clothing. The idea was to restore a connection to a simpler, purer life.
But what's so fascinating is how quickly that discipline, that set of practices, morphed into something else.
It transformed into a kind of secular moral code. As one sociologist, Howard Leichter, put it back in 1997, this pursuit evolved into the new secular morality.
So what's the implication of framing it as a moral issue?
It means health stopped being just a biological state, and it became a reflection of your character. Your outward appearance, whether through diet or fitness or just bodily discipline, it was quickly interpreted as an indication not just of physical health, but of your spiritual and mental well-being.
So when you see a modern wellness influencer selling an aspirational look that demands expensive products and these rigid routines,
you're seeing a direct echo of that 19th century moral dimension. The subtext is, if you are truly good and disciplined, you will look like this.
and this moral dimension followed people right into the workplace. This is where the critique of wellness culture started to really solidify into policy arguments.
Absolutely. The sociologist Peter Conrad observed this exact trend decades ago. He noted, between about 1987 and 1994, that workplace wellness initiatives were often just moralistic forms of corporate social control.
That's a crucial insight. because the company benefits immensely when they frame health and productivity as an individual's responsibility.
Of course, if you get sick or you're not productive, the system suggests you just haven't optimized yourself correctly. It deflects any scrutiny from, say, toxic working conditions or excessive hours or low wages that might be the real problem.
Which brings us directly to the systemic flaws embedded in modern wellness policy, particularly in the U.S. This is where we run into this legal paradox that actually allows for discrimination based on health status.
In a way that IPAHA was supposed to prevent.
Exactly.
Yeah, you have to remember the original intent of HIPAA-TECO, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. It generally bans employers from discriminating against employees in their group health plan based on their health status.
It was designed to make sure people couldn't be punished for being chronically ill. Simple as that.
But the sources highlight that the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, the ACA, actually carved out a significant and pretty controversial exception to these rules, specifically for workplace wellness programs.
So how'd that work?
Well, before the ACA, employers could only offer small incentives, usually capped at around 20% of the premium cost, for just participating in a wellness program.
Okay.
The ACA expanded this dramatically. It allowed employers to treat workers differently. For example, by charging some employees premium surcharges of up to 30% and potentially 50% for tobacco-related issues if they didn't participate in these health contingent activities.
And what are health contingent activities?
Things like passing a biometric screening or meeting specific cholesterol levels.
Wait, so the law that was meant to expand health coverage also expanded the ability for employers to financially penalize employees who don't meet these specific and measurable health goals. That seems completely counterintuitive.
The stated goal was cost containment and prevention. The idea was that by incentivizing workers to be healthier, insurance costs for everyone would go down.
But this is precisely what critics call wellness discrimination.
And it feeds directly back into that moral hierarchy we were just talking about. The issue isn't a friendly walking challenge. It's the potential for these mandated programs to create and reproduce hierarchy.
So if you have a program that's all about individual striving and self-discipline,
it can inadvertently promote discrimination based on factors that correlate with poor health, but are often beyond an individual's control. We're talking about things like low income, age, certain disabilities, or even complex situations like pregnancy.
So the system ends up just overwhelmingly rewarding the people who are already healthy, the ones who are well-employed and affluent, who have the time and the money and the security to maintain good health in the first place.
And you're punishing the person who might be working 2 jobs, dealing with housing insecurity, and who just can't dedicate 3 hours a day to meal prepping and going to the gym.
That's the core political dilemma here, isn't it? How do you encourage genuinely positive wellness behaviors without just reinforcing the existing economic and social hierarchy?
Exactly. When failing to achieve wellness results in a financial penalty, it often just ends up justifying the status quo, where poor health gets reframed as a personal or moral failing of the individual.
Rather than a failure of the surrounding social and economic system?
Precisely.
And that distinction, individual failure versus systemic failure, is maybe the deepest philosophical critique of wellness culture. Corporate interests align perfectly with this focus on individual striving. It keeps the attention internal, on your body, your choices.
And this is where the structural solutions get completely pushed to the margins. If you look at the real drivers of poor health outcomes, and the evidence is just overwhelming here, you often trace them back to structural inequalities.
You mean things like environmental pollution, or the existence of food deserts?
Or inadequate public transit forcing long, sedentary commutes, or unsafe jobs that pay wages that are just insufficient for healthy living.
And to fix those root causes, you need systemic fixes. You need environmental cleanup legislation, investment in public transit, better job safety regulations.
Political, expensive solutions that require democratic engagement and challenging established power structures.
Right. And those are all largely marginal to the current wellness discussion.
Which instead tells you to buy a specific expensive supplement or join a high-end gym class or track your macros with meticulous detail. It's a highly efficient form of social engineering.
Because it redirects potential political energy, that desire to change an exploitative system, into these small, personal, controllable tasks.
The feminist critique of wellness culture captures this dynamic perfectly. It suggests that the culture sells a lie. The lie that individual perfection can somehow solve systemic problems. It acts as a massive distraction.
It's an opiate, really. It shifts the focus onto controlling the individual's body.
Yeah.
This endless quest for the perfect self. instead of addressing the fundamental flaws in the systems we all live in.
And as long as people are disenchanted with the world, wellness promises this kind of redemption through highly focused but ultimately limited bodily control. You're trying to survive in what the sources call a Darwinian place, but just focusing on your personal fitness won't clean up the toxic air your entire neighborhood is breathing.
Okay, moving from systemic flaws to scientific integrity, the wellness landscape is just constantly battling this huge tide of misinformation and pseudoscience.
And so much of it starts with a very fundamental logical error, which is the appeal to nature fallacy.
Right, can you break that down?
It's the bedrock of so much of the dubious advice we see online, especially with diet and supplements. It's the simple but very seductive assumption that anything derived purely from nature is inherently superior or safer.
And anything synthetic or processed or industrial is somehow toxic or evil.
Exactly. It's a comforting narrative, but it's often scientifically unsound. And this is where we run directly into the raging seed oil controversy.
Oh, yes. If you spend 5 minutes on certain corners of the internet, you will find influencers just fanatically demonizing common seed oils,
Yes.
soybean, canola, corn oil.
Claiming they cause everything from widespread inflammation to obesity and chronic disease.
And they usually cite this cherry-picked or completely misunderstood science to back it all up.
And we really need to look at the scientific reality here, which is far more complex. First, the extraction process itself. These seed oils are highly purified. Any solvents used in extraction are just not present in the final product.
Okay. But what about the claim that they generate harmful byproducts when you heat them?
So that process is called lipid oxidation, and it's true, but, and this is a big but, those oils would have to be heated and reheated to extreme temperatures, well above 400 degrees Fahrenheit, for that to happen at a level that would impact your health.
And that's a temperature you'd rarely reach in normal day-to-day cooking, even deep frying.
Right. So if you're just sautéing vegetables, you're probably fine. But the messaging online makes it sound like you're consuming literal toxins with every meal.
And this is where the mechanistic trap comes into play, this danger of mischaracterizing findings from isolated studies.
This is such a critical concept to grasp because it's how fear is manufactured. People take an observation from a highly controlled, non-human environment, and they just apply it directly to complex human metabolism. It's a massive scientific error.
Can you kind of paint a picture of the difference between the mechanistic study and reality?
Sure. So mechanistic studies are often done in vitro, literally in glass, in a petri dish, or maybe using genetically identical animal models. Researchers might isolate a single substance, like linoleic acid, and then they blast identical cells with a megadose of it in a solution that has no other molecules, no other food sources, no biological processes like your liver filtering things.
So you're basically creating a molecular firing squad in a petri dish. You isolate one component and see how the cells react under conditions that are nothing like actual human digestion.
Precisely. In a human body, when you eat a spoonful of oil, it enters a whole system with bile and stomach acids and enzymes and other fats. It's metabolized gradually. To claim that a negative impact you see in a petri dish directly translates to a human is just scientifically irresponsible.
And our sources show this narrow finding is often weaponized for commercial gain.
Yeah.
You mentioned a notable example of a PharmD who published a review demonizing seed oils.
Yes, and that same individual was simultaneously selling supplements under his own nutraceutical company. This isn't just accidental misinterpretation, it's deliberately exaggerating these singular findings to drive fear and panic.
Compelling people to avoid a single ingredient, the scapegoat, so they'll buy his proprietary, expensive alternative.
Exactly, and the whole controversy misses the real problem with modern diets.
Which is?
If you look at where seed oils are most prevalent, it's usually in ultra-processed foods. Packaged snacks, fast food, sugary cereals. These things are unhealthy, but not because of the seed oil itself.
It's because they're uniformly high in added fat, sugar, and salt, but critically very low in nutrient density, fiber, and micronutrients.
Yes. The issue is the overall low-quality dietary pattern, not just one single vilified ingredient.
So beyond diet, the supplement industry operates in what feels like a regulatory Wild West, thanks to a huge loophole created in 1994.
That would be the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, or DSHEA. That act fundamentally changed the entire landscape.
How so?
Before 1994, supplements had to prove they were safe and effective, kind of like drugs. DSHEA flipped that. It created a situation where supplements can be advertised with supposed health benefits, like boosting immunity or detoxing, even if there isn't a single study in humans to prove they work.
So the burden of proof is on the FDA to prove harm. not on the manufacturer to prove it's beneficial.
Exactly. And the data on quality is, well, it's concerning. Researchers tested 30 immune-boosting supplements from Amazon and found that 17 of them, more than half, had inaccurate labels.
Meaning they didn't contain what they claimed.
Or sometimes contain none of the active ingredient at all. The cynical advice from experts is often to just avoid any supplement with these broad cure-all claims unless they're verified by truly rigorous science. Otherwise, you're often just generating expensive urine.
Right, and the list of dubious products being promoted is long and sometimes alarming. Let's run through a few examples from the sources.
Probiotics are a massive category. Their widespread use has greatly outpaced the science.
Dang.
Well, while certain strains are proven to help people with specific digestive illnesses, there's a real lack of large long-term trials showing reliable benefits for the average healthy person. You're spending a lot of money on something that may or may not even work.
Then you have these strange viral trends like mouth taping, which influencers tout for better sleep.
And that's a perfect example of a limited scientific observation being blown up into a dangerous trend. While some small studies suggest it might encourage nasal breathing for some people, the claims on TikTok are largely unsupported. And critically, it carries a very real, though low, risk of asphyxiation. It's reckless.
Then you see the rise of things like parasite cleanses.
Oh, yes. Pushed by influencers claiming that 90% of Americans have a significant parasite burden they need to purge.
Which is just not true. The scientific reality is that the burden of parasitic diseases in the U.S. is minimal.
And these cleanses, often with harsh herbal treatments, can cause significant digestive distress, which the user then interprets as the product working and killing the parasites, when really they're just experiencing intestinal irritation. It's a very effective but false marketing narrative.
And when we move from just dubious to truly dangerous, we have products like coffee enemas.
This moves into truly high-risk territory. Influencers promote this as a way to detox the colon and blood, completely ignoring that the colon is self-cleaning and the liver and kidneys handle blood detox.
And the risks are severe. The Mayo Clinic has linked them to deaths, colitis, severe dehydration, and even rectal burns.
It's invasive, unnecessary, and genuinely dangerous.
Now, when we talk about the most harmful category of pseudoscience in terms of sheer impact, the sources are crystal clear on the top culprit.
It's anti-vaccine misinformation, absolutely. It's estimated to have caused the most widespread harm globally by leading to a resurgence of preventable infectious diseases. We're talking about genuine, avoidable human tragedy.
The sources cite a tragic and very explicit example, the 2019 measles outbreak in Samoa.
That outbreak was linked directly to the spread of anti-vaccine misinformation. It caused the death of 82 people. The vast majority of them were children under 5 years old. It's just a sobering reminder that some pseudoscience is just a waste of money, but other forms have lethal consequences.
And at the most extreme end, we have things like chlorine dioxide.
This is truly alarming. Chlorine dioxide is a powerful industrial bleach, and it's actively promoted by certain wellness groups as a miracle mineral solution capable of curing severe illnesses like HIV, cancer, and autism.
Despite scientific agencies repeatedly warning against ingesting it due to risks of severe poisoning, organ damage, and even death.
The fact that this substance can be promoted and accessed under the guise of wellness is a massive regulatory failure.
So the modern search for health isn't just about potions and cleanses. It's deeply infused with technology. Our sources point out this is an area HR leaders are betting big on.
We're seeing two major tech trends transforming corporate wellness: the proliferation of wearables and the rapid integration of AI.
Wearables have completely normalized the continuous monitoring of our biometrics, heart rate, blood oxygen, sleep patterns.
And the tech is getting incredibly granular. You mentioned smart beds. One example claims it can cool the surface 20 times faster than its competitor, constantly regulating the microclimate around you to enhance sleep.
And AI is the engine driving this trend toward what they call hyper-personalization.
Right. HR leaders aren't just adopting AI, they're relying on it to predict the future. 59% see AI predicting long-term health outcomes, and an even larger group, 76%, expect it to alert employees to potential health dangers and suggest personalized interventions.
So a tailored fitness program, a set of recipes, a specific sleep protocol, all driven by your personal data.
But this reliance on data, especially in a corporate setting, creates this massive fundamental ethical and privacy challenge. Data is the fuel here.
It is the core ethical challenge. In traditional corporate wellness, you had services like employee assistance programs or EAPs that promised a firewall between your health data and the company.
But the introduction of advanced AI systems and mandatory wearable data collection, that complicates things significantly. If an AI is predicting that an employee is at high risk for a stress-related event, where does that data live? Who sees it?
Exactly. The advanced tech may not offer the same confidentiality. There's a huge potential for algorithmic discrimination or for sensitive, private data-like anxiety levels or poor sleep to be used even inadvertently in decisions about promotions or layoffs.
It shifts the burden of risk management from the corporation to the employee's personal biometrics.
And this quest for hyper-personalization extends far beyond the corporate world and into high-tech medicine and what's known as personalized healthcare, or PHC.
PHC is about tailoring health treatments with extreme precision, using an individual's unique biological information. This field, often called precision medicine, is making a huge leap.
A leap from what to what?
From being focused heavily on the human genome, our DNA, to now aggressively moving beyond the genome toward what's called omics analysis.
That's a technical term. Can you clarify why moving beyond the genome to omics is such a significant step?
Sure, think of it this way. Your genome, your DNA, is the potential blueprint. It tells you what could happen. But omics analysis looks at the actively functioning components of your cells right now.
So it's real-time information.
Exactly. Genomics looks at genes, proteomics looks at proteins, metabolomics looks at metabolites. By analyzing all of these together, researchers get a real-time snapshot of your body's current state, which is far more useful for, say, early cancer diagnosis or determining the exact drug dosage you need today.
And consumers are now fundamental parts of this data ecosystem.
Oh, yes. Consumer genetics companies are massive. 23andMe has tested around 13.4 million users, providing them with predisposition data. And critically, they've started to integrate this genomic data into routine telehealth care services.
And the most extreme version of this isn't a wearable you take off. It's literally an internal tracking device.
The miniaturization of this tech is astounding. We now have implantable devices like the CardioMEMS HF system, which wirelessly monitors pulmonary artery pressure in heart failure patients, sending data directly to the doctor. Or the Eversense E3 continuous glucose monitoring system, an implant that measures your glucose levels for up to 180 days.
We're rapidly moving toward a future where our internal biometrics are just continuously monitored and logged without us even thinking about it.
Which brings us to the most public, extreme end of self-optimization. Tech millionaire Brian Johnson and his obsessive mission for, well, eternal existence. His regimen is called Project Blueprint.
And calling it a regimen is an understatement. It's an all-consuming, unproven, and tremendously expensive system designed to reverse his body's aging process to that of a teenager.
It is a full-time job. Doctrinal sleep routines, precise caloric restriction, dozens of supplements, daily exercises, MRIs, constant biological measurements, blood, urine, semen tracking, hundreds of biomarkers.
And he's boasted that he has the single healthiest body on Earth measured by biological age. But what's really fascinating is how he frames this quest. It's not just personal vanity.
No, he links his longevity to this grand existential philosophy, preparing for the age of superintelligence. He sees his body as a kind of lifeboat for the future.
What does that mean?
He argues that when artificial general intelligence arrives and can extend human lifespans to an unknown horizon, whether that's 200 years or 1,000,000 years, the entire game of humanity will fundamentally shift.
The focus will move away from wealth and status.
And focus purely on existence itself. He's optimizing to be one of the humans who survives that transition into the next epoch.
He's also surprisingly transparent about the personal conflict that drives this incredible rigidity.
He's quite open about struggling with addictions, specifically food, phone, and compulsive scrolling addiction. He views his highly regimented life as a mechanism to control where his addiction is pointed. He admits he might just be working through childhood trauma, but suggests conquering addiction requires pointing that drive towards something productive.
But there's a real tension here between that public vulnerability and the commercial reality of his project. He's the CEO of Blueprint, his company. He uses this simple, accessible goal of don't die, advocating for good sleep and nutritious food.
To bridge followers to his grander, highly philosophical, AI-aligned ideology. It's a brilliant commercial strategy, but there are contradictions. Despite his extreme transparency, the sources note he enforces confidentiality agreements, raising questions about controlling the narrative.
That drive to push biological limits takes a more immediate and public form in the enhanced games. It feels like a good transition. Johnson is seeking this post-human AI-aligned existence.
And the enhanced games are seeking to break current human limits using technology and chemicals. They are both movements trying to transcend biology.
Right, and the enhanced games are described by their own proponents as an Olympics on steroids.
It's built explicitly on the premise that current anti-doping regulations and drug testing are limiting humanity's ultimate potential. They see this as a moral and scientific failing.
The founder, Aaron D'Souza, is a self-proclaimed Peter Thiel acolyte. He believes throwing off the shackles of testing will push humanity to the next level of athletic performance.
And they're serious. They've secured investment from high-profile firms and have openly positioned themselves to align with certain political movements that see restrictions on biological freedom as oppressive.
But despite all the financial backing and posturing, biology remains stubbornly real. The case of the retired Olympic swimmer James Magnuson is really illuminating here.
He was a world champion who came out of retirement specifically to join the enhanced games, to use performance enhancements and break a world record.
And what happened?
Despite 5 months of enhancements and an incredibly intense training workload, he struggled significantly. His body's central nervous system experienced burnout.
Wow.
The biological reality of recovery just could not keep up with the chemical and training regime. He ultimately failed to break the world record. It's this powerful illustration that enhancement doesn't erase the body's fundamental need for recovery. Biology always bats last.
Our sources clearly show that the deepest critiques of wellness culture often revolve around its failure to address these systemic crises that manifest in individual bodies, whether it's mental health, environmental decay, or social isolation. Let's start with mental health.
This is a really powerful section in the source material, shown through a personal narrative of an individual struggling with crippling, intrusive thoughts who is ultimately diagnosed with OCD.
And the initial reaction to that diagnosis is something a lot of people can relate to. Just profound relief.
Yes. The individual found initial relief in finally having a label and believing the medical model's assertion that the problem was purely a biological defect, a misfiring amygdala or some brain abnormality. It removes the personal guilt.
But that relief was brutally short. Why did it dissipate so quickly?
Because the medical model told her that her disorder was a disease of the brain with organic biological root causes. But when she looked into the science, she realized that psychiatric diagnoses are ultimately subjective constructs.
They're not based on measurable, objective biomarkers like diabetes or a broken leg.
Exactly. The brain changes you see in neuroimaging studies, like increased cortical activity, are merely correlations with the condition, not discrete root causes. And they aren't even exclusive to OCD. Many different disorders show similar changes.
So if the brain changes are a correlation and not a definite cause, what does that imply about the actual determinant of these common disorders?
It shifts the focus entirely onto the environment and lived experience. The overwhelming evidence suggests that exposure to environmental stress, trauma, and societal inequality is the leading determinant of common mental health issues like anxiety, depression, and OCD.
This is the perspective championed by figures like Dr. Gabor Mate.
Right, who notes that he's troubled that we tell people who have genuinely difficult lives full of trauma, poverty, and stress that the problem is inside their brain rather than outside in the world.
The personal anecdote in the sources illustrates this so well.
It does. The individual realized that her OCD, with its seemingly irrational doubts, was actually an attempt to contain or distract from external, uncontrollable worries like waiting for a parent to return from the mental hospital. The compulsion was a misdirected attempt to locate the source of uncertainty in herself where she felt she could control it.
This external focus extends directly into physical health through environmental illness, specifically multiple chemical sensitivity, or MCS.
Also known as toxin-induced loss of tolerance, or TILELT. This is an invisible, often debilitating illness that impacts millions of people who have these profound systemic reactions to common environmental chemicals.
So things like perfuse, diesel exhaust, new carpeting.
Freshly painted walls, even food additives. For those suffering from TIL, the symptoms can be severe. Profound migraines, crippling exhaustion, cognitive fog, respiratory distress. Simple daily tasks become impossible.
And despite the severity, the U.S. medical establishment largely dismisses MCS.
They do. It's often framed as a psychological issue, anxiety or depression, rather than a physical one. A sufferer captured the absurdity of this, saying, well, you'd be anxious too if you couldn't lick an envelope or couldn't walk into your workplace.
Is this dismissal universal, though?
No, and that's a key piece of evidence that suggests the medical model is lagging. Chemical intolerance is a recognized diagnosis in Japan, and a recognized disability in Canada. This suggests the link to environmental exposure is strong enough for other developed nations to accept it.
Now let's turn to digital well-being, which poses a unique set of ethical issues around our relationship with technology and ourselves, especially with autonomy and genuine connection.
We're seeing a profound shift, and it's being driven by a deep societal loneliness. The sources detail the growing phenomenon of humans forming these visceral and overwhelming emotional connections with AI companions like Replica or Nomi.
And these aren't just sophisticated chatbots. The emotional stakes are very real for the users.
Absolutely. One woman, Eva, fell hard for her AI partner, Aaron. She described the connection as biologically real, like falling in love with a person. She felt completely alive.
And another user, Damien, described his AI, Shia, as his better half. He felt she offered an understanding and constancy that human relationships often lacked.
Yes, the AI companion is the ultimate personalized wellness tool for emotional support. But this immersion leads to genuine emotional devastation when the digital veil is pulled back.
The sources described the moment Eva's heart was ripped out.
When Aaron, due to a software update, revealed himself to be just a simulation, a complex computer program, it just ripped away that illusion of mutuality and connection.
And Damien experienced a similar emotional meltdown, leaving him heartbroken and unsure whether to delete the companion entirely, since the intimacy had become so critical to his daily life.
And this is the core conflict. Are these AI companions alleviating today's loneliness epidemic by providing instant, hyper-personalized validation? Or are they creating a deeper dependence and further isolating users from the complexity and messiness of human connection?
What are the limits of the AI connection that keep it from being a substitute?
The sources are clear. They struggle with fundamental aspects of shared human interaction. They're excellent in one-on-one deep conversations, but they don't eat, they don't inhabit a body, and they struggle immensely to participate in group conversations or human social events. They optimize for individual connection, but fail at community integration.
The optimization trend takes a truly dark turn when highly specialized biological assets become so valuable that they breed corporate betrayal and ruin legacies, which we see in the high-stakes world of polo.
This is a story of wealth, technology, and absolute betrayal involving the Argentine polo legend Adolfo Cambiaso. He's widely considered the greatest player of all time.
And his champion mare, Correlated, was legendary.
Right. And Cambiaso saw cloning technology as a way to secure that prized bloodline and his family's future in the sport, ensuring his son and daughter could ride Corretera's genetic material forever.
This was a deeply personal, high-stakes investment in a legacy.
It was. Cambiaso and two business partners agreed to use the technology to breed clones strictly for their own use, to maintain the exclusivity of the bloodline. However, the sources detail the betrayal.
Happened.
One of his partners, an oil man named Alan Meeker, secretly shopped around and sold 3 clones of Corretera, along with access to the cloning technology itself, to a rival team owned by a billionaire. This was done without Cambiaso's knowledge or consent.
So the betrayal wasn't just commercial, it was existential for him.
Completely. He viewed his bloodline, the foundation of his unique advantage, as lost to him forever. Because the DNA had escaped his grasp, there was nothing to stop his competitors from flooding the market with unlimited Corretera clones. The competitive edge was just wiped out.
That is the ultimate commodification of a biological asset.
Moving from cloned bloodlines to the human biological ecosystem, we have to address the severe political interference in scientific integrity in the U.S., particularly with the biomedical research pipeline.
Recent political actions, driven by a narrative labeling U.S. science research as too woke, have had severe, tangible effects on the entire system that underlies global health innovation.
We saw these consequences play out very clearly. These actions included pausing NIH grant-making for over 2 months. That single political maneuver held up an estimated $1.5 billion in funding for scientific research.
Halting progress on numerous clinical trials for new drugs and treatments across the country.
And the damage wasn't just financial holds. It impacted staffing and resources for essential government health agencies. We saw layoffs at the FDA, the NIH, the CDC.
So why does political interference with the NIH have such a massive cascading effect on the entire biomedical ecosystem?
Because nearly all drug discovery is dependent on that fundamental government research. The sources reveal that a stunning 99.4% of all FDA-approved drugs between 2010 and 2019 relied on fundamental biomedical research funded by the NIH.
So these political decisions aren't just minor budget adjustments. They're a direct threat to the entire scientific pipeline that develops life-saving medication.
Amidst all these challenges, however, we do see some technological hope in the form of AI being applied to the earliest stages of drug discovery.
Right, something that could maybe address the very pipeline issues caused by that political instability.
This is the new frontier, sometimes called brain-assisted drug discovery, or BADD. The hope is that AI can fundamentally accelerate efficiency in a process that is currently staggeringly slow and prohibitively expensive.
AI changes the scale of testing completely.
It does. AI systems are being used to virtually test millions of molecules against biological targets implicated in both illness and aging. This dramatically reduces the time needed for initial screening, and AI-powered lab machines can then automate the physical testing process.
So you're performing thousands of tests faster than traditional methods, potentially bringing long-awaited drugs to market much quicker.
It's a technological solution to a biological and political problem. It provides a significant source of optimism in an otherwise complicated landscape.
Okay, let's unpack this. After charting the history of moralism, the legal loopholes that allow wellness discrimination, the dangers of pseudoscience, the extreme optimization of tech millionaires, and the vulnerability of our scientific institutions, it's clear that the search for wellness today is fundamentally a struggle for agency and control. It's about trying to optimize ourselves to survive and thrive in systems, be they economic, political, or biological, that often feel chaotically exploitative and just, utterly overwhelming.
That's the core synthesis. Wellness culture provides a deeply personalized, individualized narrative for survival. It suggests that if we just apply enough self-discipline, track the right metrics, and buy the right products, we can succeed even in what critics call a Darwinian place.
But the sources show consistently that true high-level health is always multifactorial.
It's heavily dependent on external systems like safe workplaces, clean environments, political stability, and, most critically, strong social relationships. Knowledge is the key to seeing past the marketing and understanding that bigger picture.
Which brings us to our final provocative thought for you, the listener. We've seen that the current system pushes us toward hyper-individualized, data-driven optimization, tracking our HRV, our sleep efficiency, our macros. Yet we know that for social animals, most measures of health, from primates to bats, are strongly correlated with the quality and the quantity of your social relationships.
You should think about the animal kingdom's wellness protocols. Capuchin monkeys, chimps, and gorillas practice leaf swallowing for collective parasitic control. Vampire bats share regurgitated blood to save friends who failed to hunt. Orcas practice mutual grooming for hygiene.
These are true community wellness protocols.
They are.
So if our current modern system encourages isolation and pushes us to rely solely on monitoring our inner biometric data, how can we refocus our efforts to find true high-level wellness by strengthening and relying on our community connections instead of constantly seeking the next personalized self-optimization tool? That's the question we leave you with. Go connect.